Hello all, welcome to the Consistently OK podcast, a podcast where we dive into all things pop culture related from comics to films and everything in between. My name's Luke.
I'm Nick.
Join us every week for a podcast that doesn't set its bar too high or too low, but rather keeps it at a consistently OK level for your enjoyment. This episode we're going to talk about the Arkham game series from Rocksteady Studios, so we're going to dive pretty much straight into that. But first of all, how are you, Nick?
I'm all good, mate. How are you?
I'm good as well. I am good.
Good.
Still working hard, not isolated in a home like many other people in the world.
Yeah.
So all is well.
Surrounded by plenty of comics as well. You know, that's what you want.
Surrounded by comics as always. Yeah. Reading every opportunity, reading a comic. But I'm very excited to talk about the Arkham series, and the reason that we chose to talk about this now, even though it's always been our agenda to talk about it, is because of a few weeks ago there was the DC Fandom, which was really enjoyable, and there was obviously a huge reveal. Well, it was two big reveals actually, which we're going to go into, which was the Rocksteady Games finally announced their next game, which is set in the Arkham universe, which is the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, and also a sort of sister studio with Warner Brothers Montreal, and they've announced Gotham Knights, which is not set in the same universe, but also very linked. It's like the same characters, basically. So we'll talk about that further down the line, but I guess we'll start right at the beginning with the Arkham game, the first one that came out. Unless there's anything you want to say first, Nick, before we jump right in.
No, I'm really excited to talk about the Suicide Squad and the Gotham Knights, just because we've not really spoken about it since it was announced. So
no, we haven't. Just a couple of texts, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Like I said, we'll get there. But
we'll get there.
Especially with the Gotham Knights thing, I was so excited, and then I'll tell you my reasons for why I felt a little bit unexcited. But I've come around a little bit now. But we'll get there. But so Rocksteady Studios, not a huge studio, a gaming studio at the point when Arkham Asylum released, which was 2009.
Oof.
A long time ago, it feels like. Interestingly, with Arkham Asylum, I was a huge gamer when I was a teenager. I'm now in my very young age of the early 30s, 33. And I've got all the aches and pains of a 80-year-old though. But I had a PlayStation. I was more of a Nintendo player when I was younger, and I had a PlayStation. I had a PlayStation 2. But I kind of lost track with all of the PlayStation stuff for a while and just had the Nintendo stuff. And then I was actually at home one day, and I saw the announcement trailer, I guess, on TV for Arkham Asylum, and I thought, oh my god, that looks really good. I kind of dipped my toe back in, like reading up on it, what was going on in the world. At university, I had one of my best friends he played a lot of Assassin's Creed and everything, and I kind of played it a bit with him, but again, didn't own my own PlayStation 3 at this point. And I actually had a bet with my mum. And we had this bet going, and if she lost the bet, she said she'd buy me a PlayStation 3 with the Batman game. And I thought never in a million years would this happen, but she lost the bet. And to be fair to her, she actually did. I'm going to seem very entitled now, but she did buy me a PlayStation 3 with the Batman game, and I was in. I was again out of this world for a little bit of these kind of games. You know, you go from Mario to something like Arkham Asylum, and I didn't have any background knowledge of Rocksteady Studios or the creative team, or, you know, I knew Kevin Conroy was doing the voice. I knew Mark Hamill was doing the Joker's voice, so I'd read up a little bit of that. And I remember sitting down to play it, and the first scene is basically the Batmobile tearing through. I think he comes over the bridge in the Batmobile with the Joker in the back, and you walk through Arkham. And it's my first real experience of sort of opening credits during like an in-game scene, basically. Like you're moving as the Batman, Joker's talking to you, the credits are rolling at the beginning, and then you're in the game then. And for me to step into that as a big Batman fan, it had this huge, like, is rapport the right word for the game? I hit it off with this game. I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm fully in this game. I am invested, and I just played it. I played it continually until I had done the game. Basically, obviously, I slept ish, but it was fantastic. It was my first taste of trophies as well in a game, a PlayStation game. And I remember thinking, oh, that's nice. What's that trophy for? And then going back again and again in the game. But the opening scene, which is what Rocksteady have done with all the Arkham games, was great. It was really enjoyable. And do you remember it off the top of your head?
Yeah, so I came to it quite late because I think I remember seeing it advertised and 2009. So probably 2009 time I was probably a big kind of Halo. I was an Xbox gamer. Was being the word there. I've switched to PlayStation. Not that there's some weird war, but Anyway,
there is. We all hate you.
So I was very much a first-person shooter kind of gamer at the time, and I think my first experience of Arkham Asylum was seeing a friend play through it, and I just thought, wow, this is really impressive. I think I was initially skeptical when I saw the trailer because generally, I think up to that point, a lot of superhero games were just a little clunky for me, except for Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation 2 is a crowning achievement. But
is it though? Is it if you look at it now? If you go on YouTube and you look at that game now, is it as good as it? You remember it looking?
We don't do that though.
It's like no, we don't think about that. It's like looking back at WWE No Mercy, which is the best wrestling game ever, as far as I remember. But when you look at it, you're like, was it that good? But it was. It was.
But yeah, so I sort of approached Arkham Asylum quite late, and then picked it up after seeing a friend play it, and I didn't actually know that Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill voiced it at the time either. That came a little bit later. I think it came at the point probably like halfway through playing it or whatever. I was like, I sort of recognize this world and not sure why. And then researching, I was like, oh, it's basically just the animated series.
Because Paul Dini actually, he was the writer for Arkham Asylum.
Was he?
The guy who, yeah.
Oh my God. How did I not know that?
He wrote the script for Arkham Asylum, and he had, I think, him and Sefton Hill, who was the Rocksteady. I don't know if he's like the Neil Druckmann of Rocksteady. I don't know if he's director, or I think he's the game director generally. And they co-wrote Arkham City with someone else, and then he wasn't involved in the others. But Arkham Asylum, as far as I know, and maybe I'm wrong, he was the main sole writer for this game. He obviously had some notes thrown at him, but yeah, he wrote it, and obviously he was the main guy who got the animated series going. He wrote episodes of that, I think, and obviously several comics. So
that's crazy. Yeah, so I sort of just approached it through a friend, really. And then, it sort of hit me that the world felt familiar because of the animated series. And then I remember thinking throughout it, I was thinking, this is a good game. I wasn't at the point of this is a great game until the scene where you see Crime Alley. The bit where you're walking and then you just suddenly get hit with it. And that whole kind of segment really impressed me in terms of the writing, but also just the development of the game, that they could take you to the origins of this Batman, but within the confines of you stuck in Arkham Asylum, that they didn't take you out for like a flashback or something. It's sort of, you do go through it. And I was super impressed with that because I just didn't feel like I'd experienced that sort of storytelling before in a video game. But, and this is me looking back at it retrospectively as well, in recent years, I've sort of come to the conclusion that with comic book adaptations, with Batman, like every character, I've got something that needs to be there for it to work. And with Batman, there's two things. One, Gotham has to feel gothic. It has to feel like Gotham. Can't feel like any city in America. It has to feel like Gotham to me. And the second one is that as much as there is an argument that people don't want to see an origin story, for Batman, his origin is built into the DNA of who he is. Like you can't.
You have to put it in there.
Yeah, somewhere.
I mean, to make this. We saw it in the film Joker, didn't we? Very at the end, towards the end and stuff like that. They probably went back and forth, Todd Phillips and the people writing it. Like, should we put it in there? But I don't see anything against it. I agree with you. I think you have to put it in there, and I think it's the way you put it in there. There's a very basic way you could do it, and it just seems like it's another. You're just telling the same thing again, but if you do it in a special way, like they did in Arkham Asylum, like because it was the Scarecrow, wasn't it? It was this toxin.
Yeah.
if I remember right. And he's Batman doesn't know he knows he's been attacked, but he doesn't realize that he's got the toxin in him, and he's imagining everything. And it's so I think it's like there's a bunch of lightning, and you're in one room, and there's loads of lightning, but you're in the confines of Arkham Asylum, and then there's bodies there, and they're in body bags as well in one bit. It's in the morgue. The Bruce's dad, Thomas Wayne, and everything. I agree with you. I think it's good to have that stuff in it, and if that's the bit that switched you on with Arkham Asylum, it was such a clever way to make that happen, to put that scene in there.
Yeah,
it just really stood out for me as well.
Yeah, it just added so much weight to it that it went from being just a Batman game to way more kind of character piece. That having that moment done in that exact way, you sort of then suddenly felt the weight of this Batman. And I always think that's interesting.
It made it feel like a story. I mean, you can see how well it was written, obviously, the game, but it felt like a proper story. It didn't feel like a button smasher. Like, you're going through the motions, you're Batman. Yes, you're trying to track down the Joker. There were so many layers put in quickly, and little Easter eggs as you went through. But that part was pivotal in making it making it a really smart story and making you feel a bit more than it was just you being Batman beating people up. Like, add more emotion to it. It was really good. I wrote that down as talk about earlier, but I was like, don't let it be the first thing you say. Like, don't be like, so Arkham Asylum, how about that Bruce Wayne crime alley scene? So I'm glad we waited a little bit of time to get there, but it was huge. And that is, I would be the same if I was watching someone play that and I saw that bit. I think I would be buying it the next day and being like, right, I have to see what happens next.
It's just such a brilliant piece of writing to put, especially because I think it's like the middle of the game as well, or maybe even the final act. It's definitely not early on.
No, I think it's probably about halfway through. I think there's a lot of like earlier, like, get like Victor Zsasz, and you've got like taking down henchmen. You obviously learn the mechanics of the game. And I think it's when you first come across Scarecrow relatively early on, it's when it starts to move forward. And then I think that's somewhere in the middle. And then you have all the, a lot more of the Titan stuff in the third act. I just going into it, you go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's a real testament to the fact that the whole series from 1 to 3 feels, I don't know whether it was like this, but it feels like it was built up and that they knew they had a story for a trilogy. And that moment is sort of your first pinpoint as to the sort of journey this Bruce is going to go on, the journey that this Batman's going to go through. And I think that's a really smart decision, because when you get to that kind of like ending and you start to then wonder about what's next, you're left with this resonance of the character. You're left with the emotional impact that I think up to that point anyway, very few superhero games had. And I think that's definitely kind of one of the absolute tests.
I can't think of a superhero game that had that sort of like almost thinking ahead. We're going to make a. There probably are some other, but off the top of my head, I can't think. But I mean, I know for a fact through replaying Arkham Asylum and reading about it, they had, there are rooms in Arkham Asylum that have maps of Arkham City, and they had the Easter eggs of Arkham City built in. And in Arkham City, they had things leading into Arkham Knight. So they definitely had a game plan, and the fact that it's structured in a way that you're in Arkham Asylum and you can see in the distance Gotham. Yeah. So you want to be in Gotham, but it's like they built Arkham Asylum, so it's a pretty big area to cover. Yeah. And then you obviously get Arkham City, which is just a quarter of Gotham. So you're out of the asylum, you're in this bigger space, and then the third one, they're like, right, here is Gotham. Go nuts. Yeah. I only wish you could go back. Like, I wish you could have gone through. Like, I wish you could have gone back to actually, do you go back to the asylum in Arkham Knight? No.
I haven't played the DLC, so I don't know if you do it there.
What, Nick? You were supposed to play the DLC.
I know. So there is a running trend with this that both yourself and Harry, one of our friends, has been telling me to constantly go and play the DLC, especially the Mr. Freeze part of it.
Mr. C DLC is Mr. C?
Mr. C.
Freeze. Mr. C. The Mr. C DLC, the Mr. Freeze DLC is well worth your time. Yeah. But we'll get there. Let's not do what I always do, and that's jump way ahead of myself, which is what I think will happen again. But we won't talk about Asylum much more because it's the older game. But it was a great game. It's out of all the Arkham games, including Arkham Origins, which isn't a Rocksteady game. It was the second best received game in total. Did better than Arkham Knight, but not as good as Arkham City.
Interesting.
Better than Origins. I think for its time it was quite. I don't know if groundbreaking is too big of a word to use, but it was, for me anyway, as a player, it was pretty groundbreaking. As a huge superhero fan, a huge Batman fan.
I definitely think it. Sorry to interrupt there. I definitely think it is because the gameplay of it. I hadn't experienced a third person beat 'em up with that sort of gameplay. I think
it flowed fantastic. The mechanics, the fighting. There are some games where you get in them and you're like, oh, like this is such a grind and this is just so tedious. A bit like I know we've said already off the podcast, but what we hear about the new Avengers game, like it's a bit of a button smasher and everything like that. But the flow of the game, like the damages, all the bits that came, the Predator tactics, that's such a fucking cool thing to be as Batman, like hiding up on a gargoyle, waiting for someone to come across you, and then going down head first, snatching them up in your cape, giving them a smack and tying them up. That was endless fun for me. I was just like, I'm going to go back in that room and I'm going to not be caught, not be seen. I'm going to get rid of everyone. The mechanics were great overall, and I think that's pretty groundbreaking. Is you play a lot of games now and they have the same ideas and stuff like that, like kind of flows the same way as the way Arkham Asylum did. I think they definitely set a bar for how gaming mechanics in those kind of games could be, and they only polished them more and more, obviously, as the series went on.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that was super interesting about the series as well, is that after playing Arkham Asylum, you kind of think, how do you normally with a sequel you update the gameplay, there's something different, it kind of refreshes it, but the gameplay in Arkham Asylum is just so fluid that going into the next kind of two games, there are updates to it, but it's not necessarily.
Well, they update the weapons, don't they?
Yeah,
mechanics itself. Rocksteady Studios, there wasn't much they had to tinker with them, which is fantastic for them, because that gave them more time to focus on the world they were building, the script, characters they want to put in, like what else can this character do in his moveset and stuff. And it wasn't like they had a bunch of criticism. They're like, okay, when we get to the next Arkham game, we're going to redo it all. It's going to feel completely different. And, again, people could have criticized that. It was so well received that when they got to Arkham City, they were like, there's not much else we have to do here. Like, we'll throw in like a tightrope thing. And obviously, because it's Arkham City, obviously you could glide a bit more, whereas in Arkham Asylum, there's a lot of roofs and there's only the courtyard bit in the asylum where you're sort of free to glide a little bit, which is still great when you got there. But I think it was fluid. I still enjoyed it. I played the remastered version a year ago, maybe, whilst it was a little bit glitchy because it was remastered. I don't think it was completely polished. It was still fantastic. Like, it felt the same as it did when I played Arkham Knight. Like, not much had changed.
Cool.
So, but a really, really good game. Asylum was fantastic. I loved it's hard to really judge anything, but I loved all the little side stories. I loved the fact you could go around and find little tidbits about other villains. Like you could go by the cells and there would be, there's like links to Clayface and stuff who's in Arkham City. And like there was notes in some of the cells saying like the Mad Hatter was here and some villains that show up later. Just very smart, very clever. I loved the Joker. I loved the Scarecrow. I loved, like I said, the way it was written. And I think the only thing that was a bit of a miss for me is the ending with Joker turning into this big Titan monster. But obviously they had an end game there because that situation is basically Joker's storyline in Arkham City, that he's completely riddled with this Titan overdose, which brings us into City, unless there's anything you want to talk more about Asylum.
Yeah, no, this just going to City completely. I think it's that Mad Titan thing was definitely what I kind of felt like let the game down a little bit. You sort of get into that third act, and then it felt just like a big beat 'em up with like a really kind of beefy villain that I just didn't have the connection to. But then you are right that completely sets up City, so you have to kind of go through that to set up what you get in City. And City's storyline is amazing because of it, because you present a Joker that's gone through that.
With Arkham City, then were you on board straight away? Is it something that you knew you were going to get right there and then? I was ready for Arkham City. I was so in. I had prepped. I had read everything I could. I'd found out who was writing it. It was Paul Dini and Sefton Hill and some person I can't remember now. You did a very good job, whoever you are. I actually got in touch with Rocksteady as well. I was such a fanboy of the Arkham Asylum game, and I had this wonderful signed poster from all the crew that worked on it, including probably the person who helped write the story, whose name is gone on my brain.
How did you get that? That's amazing.
I was at this time I was quite new to Twitter as well, and I was very much like, I think I can just get in touch with whoever I want to get in touch with and see what happens. So I actually I started following Rocksteady, and I talked to 2 or 3 people that were working on it, and I see if they get back in touch, and they all did. They all responded. I was like, Asylum was fantastic. Like, it got me back into PlayStation. And I talked with one of the, I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was one of the designers or not. And they basically said like, oh, like, thanks for your infusion. Like, where are you from? Like, I'd like to send you something. And she did. She sent me this Arkham Asylum poster signed by all the team, and like a keychain, which broke after 24 hours. And it was super, super nice.
That's crazy. That's so good.
So anyway, but that's how I was like, I'm not saying like I was like stalking Rocksteady Studios, but I just moved to Brighton in England, and I was just about to start a job, but I was a few weeks out from starting it, and this game had come out. It was about to come out, and I was like, I have to get it now. And I was just fully in, like, again, like Asylum, but even more so, like, I'm so ready. But were you not like that crazy, but were you, the first day it came out, were you playing it? Were you excited?
Yes. Can you remember what year it came out, actually, before I say this next?
I'm pretty sure it was 2 years later. I think it was 2011, which is why I'm going to talk later about Suicide Squad being a bit of a piss take. But
yes,
2011, yeah.
Yes. So I was working at Game when it came out then. And working there, you just sort of see all the build up for it. You go through the pre-order phase, you go through the marketing phase, you just kind of see everything for it, which I think intrinsically helps you to just get excited for it.
You have this English guy phoning you every day. Where's my copy?
Yeah, where is it?
I'm so ready.
In fact, just complete side note here, but I'm pretty sure I only ever served you in game like once. I'm pretty sure.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Did.
I have this one vague memory of being like, it's Luke. Oh my God, he's here.
But I'm a man who moves around. I'm in Norway now, aren't I? I just lived in every part of England, and I was like, right, I'll see what's across this bit of water. So I didn't go there that much. I don't know why. Because I had a game card that had loads of points on it. I think I was just an early online shopper.
You just heard I started working there, and you were like, oh, I can't go there anymore.
Yeah, I did. To be fair, I did get my copy from Game, actually. I remember it was because I just moved to Brighton, like I said, and I remember going in there, and they were like, yeah, we didn't put your special edition aside. I was like, you what? So, but I did get one in the end, but the original one, they hadn't put by. So anyway, you're in Game. So you're excited about everything.
Yeah, really excited about it. And I think at this point as well, I'd started to read more comic books and more graphic novels, and just slowly started getting immersed in that kind of world, because it was probably a year before I started to write Snow the Dawn, maybe.
Yeah,
I think that was 2012 that we started to write that. And so
you should plug it, Nick. You should plug it. Where can you buy Snow the Dawn?
Oh, anywhere, everywhere.
Still everywhere.
But yeah, so I'd sort of started immersing myself in that world, and so because of that, the game, I felt like I was relating to the game more. That I was kind of going, oh, okay, I can kind of see a style of it, like an art style, and I can get a sense of what they could do with the character past Arkham Asylum. And Arkham City was a new concept as well. As far as I know, they hadn't done that in the comic books at any point.
The thing about Arkham City, just we'll obviously go back, but you say about new designs and stuff. But for me, one of the biggest selling points for Arkham City pre-release was that Hugo Strange was portrayed as the main villain.
Yes.
So there will be spoilers for people who haven't played it, which if you haven't, very shameful on you. Yeah. But Hugo Strange, which is he's such a good character in the comics as well, and he's barely touched upon really, but he was the big bad in the trailer. You know, he was like, I know your identity. And that for me was also, that almost sold it straight away for me. I was like, I've never, I mean, like I said, there aren't many huge superhero games out, but the fact they chose such a like a random villain in terms of what they could have done.
Yeah.
Also, they had loads of sub villains, but you know, you have to expect Joker to still be the main guy that they promote, which he was very slightly. You know, Ra's al Ghul probably would have been 2011. I think by then, Batman Begins was Batman Begins was way out before that, wasn't it? That was so early on. I guess Dark Knight Rises was probably just due out. So, you know, Ra's al Ghul was already a more of a name that some people wouldn't know. Yep. You know, they could have gone again. Penguin was in it, but he wasn't the main guy. A lot of choices they made, but Hugo Strange was such a unique choice. And I remember seeing him in the trailer and thinking, nice. Like I'm more in than I was 2 minutes ago. So
yeah, and it's a really nice trailer as well. I actually watched that just before we started podcasting.
Such a good trailer. So good.
Yeah, it's just really, really clever, and I think he's a smart villain for a video game as well, because he's the kind of villain you can take on over 20-30 hours kind of thing, however long the game takes.
But I didn't actually think there was going to be a twist either with him. Generally, when I played it, I didn't really think much of it. I thought, you know, Joker was involved and he was involved. There's like two main villains already. There's, you know, and all the Ra's al Ghul stuff had happened. You know, he had his own bit, which is it was clever writing, because there's little tidbits throughout his bit to suggest that he is the main villain. But not once when I was playing was I like, oh yeah, he's going to come back later. I was like, so long, Ra's al Ghul. I'm off with your daughter. But such a good game. Again, one of those games when it starts, when you're walking at the beginning, when Bruce Wayne comes up to the Bruce Wayne's. What's wrong with me? Bruce Wayne's. He comes up to the podium, and then he, you know, all of a sudden you're in City, and then you're locked in there, and you're walking through the credits, and you know, you see Penguin, and he's this. Isn't he a Cockney in it?
I think so. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's a Cockney. And,
the opening is really impressive because it sets the tone for the game. It's the introduction back into that world. It's like, welcome back, but things are slightly different. As well as, you know, I guess they peaked the graphics a little bit as well. So you've got a bit more of like a...
Yeah, I mean, instantly. The first bit I remember, when you get Alfred sends you the tube, I don't know, it's got your suit in.
Yeah.
And you get that on, and then you're at the rooftop, and you can see Town Hall, which has Two-Face and Catwoman inside, but you don't know that straight away. And then you see the scope of what Arkham City is, and yes, instantly the graphics have had a bit of a boost. So, it really did just sort of introduce you back into that world at an elevated level. It's kind of, here's where we're at now, and also then it sort of I think post finishing the game, you start to think, if that was the opening to the middle game, what they're going to do with the third one when we're in Gotham. Next, again, they had little Easter eggs about that as well. And you're right, you're already thinking like the next logical step is Gotham. Like, what is that going to be like? Yeah,
it's so impressive. And also then just the scope of Arkham City. Like Arkham Asylum felt like there was a lot to do, but you still felt constrained by the fact that it was just the asylum. But I think in turn that sort of adds to the sort of the unsettling feeling, I guess, a little bit, that you're just sort of trapped in this place with these people. Arkham City feels huge, still with that same restraint where you're a bit like, oh, I'm trapped in a city with all these people that are just going absolutely nuts. But it's got clusters of villains. It's not just you sort of go through an asylum. You're going to go to different parts of the city, and each part has a different feel to it based on which villain. And I think that, again, is just a testament to the writing, that it's kind of, they've crafted a game that's very much based around the villains, and I think that's always a smart decision with Batman. Is
the rogue. I mean, Spider-Man's a bit of a rival, but rogues gallery wise, I think Batman is the one in there. It's everything.
Yeah.
Everything in there.
Yeah.
Mr. Freeze.
There you go. Arnie, mate. That's what you want.
Best.
I wish they released a mod for that where you could have replaced Mr. Freeze with the Arnie Mr. Freeze.
I'd be all over that.
Yeah.
I was disappointed with Gotham Knights when they had Mr. Freeze in the gameplay, and I was like, this looks nothing like Arnie.
Yeah.
The best Mr. Freeze there ever was.
And ever will be.
Ever will be, yeah. He's best. But I loved the sort of factions of Arkham City. I loved there was like a Joker area and a Penguin area, and a Two-Face area. I loved the fact it didn't take the piss either of having to wait to see these villains as well. Like within the first hour of the game, you've come across Penguin and Two-Face. Catwoman's involved. I loved, again, so good with the side villains like the Mad Hatter. Again, such a villain that you wouldn't come across in many other games, but super trippy bits with him with the rabbit masks on and everything.
Yep.
It's a really good game. Again, that is the best received game out of the Arkham series. And I definitely can see why, because, it was already, the mechanics were pretty much polished already. Like we said, it's a huge step up from Arkham Asylum. It's not sort of, Arkham Knight, which we'll talk about, has the Batmobile and stuff in, which took a lot away from a lot of the Batman part of it, like on your 2 feet on the ground. But this had everything. Had the story, the villains, bigger space. It was very smart. And I, when I did play it again, I played it a lot. And I definitely think it's probably one of the best games I've ever played.
Yeah, it also, just thinking about that when you were saying it with Catwoman, the fact that they gave Catwoman and took the time to give Catwoman a story that's not just like an add-on. It feels like it's integral to the plot. That it's, at that point, the world building isn't just about Batman, which I think is the other thing that Arkham Asylum kind of did, or built the kind of tracks for anyway, is to kind of say this game is going to be about developing all of these people. It's not just this main character.
But you're spot on, because they do that with it. Like Harley Quinn, she has an arc.
Yeah.
A bigger arc. I think most people would think, obviously, with, the first, she has, I guess, a minor-ish bit in the first one, but she has a huge bit in Arkham City. Even after Arkham City, where there's little Easter eggs with the pregnancy test and stuff. Big part of Arkham Knight. Obviously, a big part of the future of the Arkham universe in this world.
Yeah.
Even like Mr. Freeze, even I love that character, and he had he's had DLC Spiral from Origins, Knight, and he had a big part of this one, Arkham City.
Yeah. And I think as well, just talking about kind of like looking at how they built towards a sort of final game, one of the things that really surprised me with Arkham City, which again was sort of something that I knew about because I'd read about it before playing the game, like I'd read comic books of it, was introducing Azrael.
Yes. Fantastic. And again, within the first 5 minutes, he's there. When I went back the second time, he's there watching you. Such a smart, just as a Batman fan, like we are and stuff like that, the little bits like that you see when you see a character like Azrael, and you know what he means to the Batman comics and everything, and you just see him, and he's just there, and he's testing you and all that stuff. Just smart.
It's just he's also one of those characters that I think isn't necessarily in the same wheelhouse as like the general public of when they think about Batman villains.
No,
he's a very kind of a bold choice to go, here's this character that generally people aren't going to know. So when he's talking about, Batman being something not necessarily good, you're kind of like, what does that mean? And if you're a comic book reader, or you're kind of in that comic book world, then you kind of go like, oh, they're building towards something that is pretty gnarly. Like they've got a good scope with it. And I think that was just such a bold decision to make.
Definitely. And Azrael speaks about like Gotham being on fire, doesn't he? That's what he says towards the end. And, Batman's like, what the fuck's he on about?
Yeah.
But it's, again, so huge. And he's in Arkham Knight, isn't he? I played Arkham Asylum City since I've gone through Arkham Knight. So I remember having him. He was in it for quite a bit of that, I think, several times in the story anyway. I think you play as him, don't you? Am I right in thinking that?
Can't remember.
I seem to feel like I did some. I seem to think that Batman's actually testing him, and he's like he's having like these rooftop fights.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, great. City is a great game. I loved, like I said, the story. I loved the fact that Paul Dini was on it. It's really one of my favorite writers for Batman as well. And it was great. It was really good. And they, like I said, they linked into Arkham Knight. Is there anything you want to say more about City before we?
No, I think that's pretty spot on. I think City is just a super impressive game. They took really bold storytelling choices. Again, it's that sort of retrospective stuff that I think the more that I've started reading the character of Batman in comic books, you really see what they did with Arkham City. It's just super impressive for a video game. And it's one of those things that, like, this is a bit of a side tangent, but it's not. With Nolan's Batman trilogy, I love Batman Begins. Dark Knight, I think, has good moments, and then Rises is okay for me. But I think that's built out of the fact of just then reading so much from the character and the Arkham games that they do things that aren't in those films that I wanted.
Yeah.
But had you spoken to me before going through all of this kind of like learning about, the character in the comics and playing the Arkham games, I would have said that Nolan's interpretation of Batman's amazing. It's only just retrospectively having gone through stuff. And that's where you really kind of look at something like Arkham City and you go, okay, that's something where they've gone, this is going to hit fairly mainstream because it's going to be, a fairly big console release and PC release, but you're going to encounter characters and encounter storylines that you might not expect you would. And I think that's just amazing. It's really, really impressive.
All of that, I agree with everything. And I think it opened up with City as well, just how much they went into Batman. I picked up the Arkham City comic as well. I don't know if you read that ever. Like a tie-in comic. And that was the first time I experienced that as well as a comic, like a game and a comic tying in together, like two of my favorite worlds, basically.
Yeah, I read the first issue. And I think I read the first issue because I feel like Game were giving it away free with purchase of the game. I think it
did come with a game at Game.
Yeah,
Game with the game
at Game. Yeah, because I've still got it in my comic book collection. I keep flipping through it. And I'm like, why have I just got one single
Nick?
issue?
I actually have a spare of the graphic novel, which you can have, Nick. It is yours to have. My gift to you. But it's fantastic. One thing, just completely off track, but when you said about Dark Knight Rises, I had a flashback to us at a pub in Stratford when I was. We weren't arguing, but there were strong choices about how excited I was about the Dark Knight Rises compared to how excited you were for Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I still love
Andrew Garfield. And you were like, no, it's going to be this. I was like, what are you talking about? And I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. And I was like, it's Dark Knight Rises all the way. And I just remember my oldest brother was sitting there like, I just want to see both of them. But we were both so like, no, you're way off the mark. And I remember walking home that night with my brother being like, I don't know what Nick was talking about. Like, how could he not want to see The Dark Knight Rises more than Amazing Spider-Man 2? Anyway, just a story sidetrack. So we've both completed Arkham City. We're waiting for Arkham 3. But curveball, Warner Brothers Montreal step in. They want a bit of the action. And they come in with Arkham Origins, which I was very excited about as well. I think it came out 2 years later. So we had 2009 was Asylum, 2011 was City, 2013 was Origins, and Arkham Knight came out in 2015. So obviously the reason, I believe, probably a lot more time to develop Arkham Knight, which was their first game on the PlayStation 4, I think, so they have a lot more to work with. But Arkham Origins is like a bit of a middle ground, so you get something. Probably the best trailer out of all the Arkham games for Arkham Origins, with Deathstroke fighting Batman.
Also, not just that, sorry to cut in here. So that trailer is amazing with Deathstroke. It's just phenomenal. It is basically just a mini Batman animated film. But there's a TV spot, which is, I don't know if you remember, it's the one where it's like, it shows Bruce going through the ages.
Yes, I do. And he's like a kid, and then he's like...
Yeah. It's like 50 seconds long, but it's utterly amazing and captures the essence of Batman, captures the themes, captures everything. I consistently look at that and just think that
Nailed it.
is, yeah, it's everything that
Yeah.
Batman is.
I think this studio, because they did a lot of promo before Gotham Knights was announced, they've been doing it for a year with Court of Owls symbols and everything like that. So I think one of their strongest points of the Arkham Origins thing was the promotion stuff. And I think that's why so many people were into it. With the game, though, itself, again, I was very excited. Like, special editioned it, all that stuff. Great statue, great Batman Joker statue that came with it.
Good man.
But I was a little bit disappointed. I did think there was a lot of glitches with it. That was the thing that was disappointing. When I actually played it, I think I was in a bit of a... I don't know where I was in the world. I think I was in between... I think I was maybe in between England and Norway at the time. And I remember, I think I played it sort of... When I wasn't here, I was back home and I was playing it on and off. And because there were so many glitches, I didn't lose interest. I completed it and everything, but it didn't resonate with me the way that Asylum and City did. I wasn't like, all right, I can either sleep or I can play Arkham. Like, I'll play Arkham instead. But with this, it was like, I'll just go to sleep probably. Got to get a flight in the morning. But because it was glitchy and it felt like such a dark game as well. It didn't feel like the lighting in the game itself was great. I know it was set Christmas, like the snow effect looked good, but I mean, I remember one point just falling forever, which was a glitch, and you couldn't get out of it without turning the game off, and then you're back. And I remember it happening like 3 or 4 times in a row, and I was like, oh my God. And I remember like 2 of the Riddler trophies that were hidden. There was a glitch, so you couldn't actually get them. And I was like, well, this is great. I really want that trophy for no reason at all, but I want it. But glitches aside, the mechanics work very similar to Asylum and City, even though they felt a bit more heavy, and the story was really good.
Yeah.
I didn't know how the Joker was going to play into it. I knew he was in it because of the statue and stuff, but I didn't expect the twist that happened with Black Mask.
Yeah.
But I think I only ever played it through once. I think, which is probably why I don't have loads to say about it. I remember the glitches. I remember the story being great. I remember the voice casting bothering me before I played it, because I was like, right, it's not Kevin Conroy, it's not Mark Hamill, but Troy Baker is very, very talented. He's great in pretty much all the things he did, and he did a fantastic job with what he had.
Yeah.
And I like the fact they kept some of the villains, like Killer Croc, look the same. I think the only thing with the villains that would annoy me is that they didn't feel the boss battles were better, but they didn't feel as fleshed out as the other games. It was very quick. Like Deathstroke was supposed to be a huge part of it, and he was done and dusted within minutes.
Yeah.
Of coming across him. But how did you feel playing it? What were your takeaways?
Yeah, I think I actually came to it quite late, and I can't remember why. I can't remember if it was a case of I knew it was a prequel, and I don't know if that in some way not put me off it, but I was more like, I'm less interested in it than a sequel. Knowing it was a different studio as well, I think sort of delayed me purchasing it. And I remember even thinking, like, the trailer looks amazing, I should really get this. But I think it came out at a time when there were other games. It sort of launched in that like October period, and there was like a whole bunch for the games.
That's another reason. I remember that is spot on, because I was just thinking there must have been more than me just traveling, but there were other games out at the same time. I think I can't remember what they were. There's probably an Assassin's Creed or something going on in the world.
Something out that was, because it was
GTA. I think that was one of the games that was out at the time.
Okay, yeah, I mean that makes sense. But that was the thing. It just sort of it never landed on my thing, like on my console, until maybe like a couple of months afterwards.
Yeah,
after it came out. And I'm a huge Christmas fan, and anything that's Batman put at Christmas is my jam.
Like Shane Black.
Yeah,
it is Shane Black, isn't it? He makes all his films around Christmas.
Yeah. I just absolutely love it as a setting, and especially for Batman in Gotham, because I think Gotham just suits snow. So when I eventually came to it, I think because I'd had that delayed reaction to it, and because I'd sort of built it up in my head that I was like, this probably isn't going to be as good as Rocksteady, I think I actually enjoyed it way more.
Yeah.
Probably because the expectations were just lower. Had I bought it on launch and been really hyped about it, don't know. But it really impressed me. And again, it was because of that kind of storytelling that I don't know if I'm at the point now where I can play a game that's glitchy as long as the story's good. Like I can kind of forgive it for any glitches as long as it's not like impeding me going through the story. Like if I was playing a mission, I kept getting to the same point, it was like not working, then I'd go, this is awful. But if it's just the odd one here and there, I can kind of forgive it if the storytelling's really strong. And I felt like in Arkham Origins, it was that case, especially with Black Mask. Like Black Mask, again, a villain that I was just kind of thinking that's a really smart idea to do for an earlier Batman story.
Yeah, it was because Batman wasn't as established at that point.
Yeah.
So it's a good villain, isn't it? Like,
yeah, he's a really smart villain for that.
Again, it's not obviously there's you can say it's more. Obviously, I'm just interrupting you, but in terms of what we said about like the other characters and stuff, and also being their stories being well done, the one person story, obviously in Origins, that was very well done was Joker's. It felt just as much as a sort of a Joker origin story, which it was, than just the Batman's story, because it wasn't Batman's origin, was it? It wasn't like him being it was like his origin is he started out as Batman and this is what's happening. But there's such a huge part. Probably the thing that I love most about that game was the Joker bit when he's been arrested and you see him I think he must be in the asylum, and he meets Harley Quinn for the first time, and that whole like nut house bit was just really good. Like, really good to turn him and put him on that path to he always wants to be, because Batman saves him, doesn't he? If I remember right, they fall through glass and Batman saves him. He's like, why didn't you kill me? Or he's like, no, I don't kill. And Joker's like, ooh, I like that.
It is. Yeah, it definitely feels like the Origins part of it is more for the villains than Batman, and I think that's the smart choice that they made, because it lines up with the series. Like I was saying, that the whole series is sort of about the villains. It's about his rogues gallery, and Origins fits into that so storytelling wise anyway so well. But I think I felt that the game was on par with the other two, or maybe more on par with Arkham Asylum, because I think City, just the scope of it was just amazing. But again, it possibly just because I came to it late. I don't know.
Maybe it was that for me. I think I'm the opposite side to you. The glitching on it did ruin it for me. I wanted like a complete experience of like start to finish, really enjoying it, and I think I was disappointed because I completely overhyped it in my own head. Yes, the other studio thing put me off it slightly, and so did the voice casting change. But you know, I was in from the moment I got like I said, a small fortune on a special edition, all the stuff beforehand, again the art books and everything, and I was ready to go. And just so many glitches when I played it. And if anything, I wish they'd done it when they remastered Asylum and City. I wish they remastered Origins as well, but obviously there's probably too much to do there. But I would actually really enjoy playing it again, I think, now. But because I've only played it once and my PlayStation 3 is in a better place until it comes up again, I'm not going to play it, I don't think. But yeah, I'm surprised to hear that you... I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed the story, but it just missed something for me, sadly.
Yeah. I don't know if it was just because I wasn't as hyped up about it as I guess for Arkham City I was. Like Arkham City, I was definitely kind of hyped, and you know, if that had come out and sort of been not, I think if Arkham City, if I'd had that same level of hype for Arkham Origins, then I would have been a little bit like, oh, it's not as strong. But yeah, I was just really happy with it, and again, it also just gave me two of the best Batman trailers. Like
trailers were, I mean, that's the thing. It's like DC films for me. The trailers just, man, they're good, aren't they? They're really good. Sometimes the films, a future podcast, we will talk about this, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. But it didn't take me long to not be hyped about Arkham again. Don't get me wrong. When I finished Origins, I was like, that was a good game, but it's not the same as Asylum City. Because a year after that, they announced Arkham Knight. 2015, they released Arkham Knight. This time, we're all on our PlayStation 4s, having the time of our lives. I think. Xbox Did you have a PlayStation 4? Xbox One. Nick?
Yeah. I made the poor choice there.
So, Arkham Knight, if I was hyped and ready, I don't know why I keep saying hyped. I rarely ever say hyped in my life. But I was hyped. And I was good to go. I had moved to Norway completely. I remember I had ordered the again, the special edition. Should just stop getting everything to go with it. Had it shipped over, and I was, oh man, I bloody hell, I really liked Arkham Knight. Not as much as I liked Arkham City, but I didn't get the criticism of the Batmobile stuff. It just was what it was. Everybody was crying out for the Batmobile. You're in it within 10 minutes. Yes, it's a little bit like a tank thing, and yes, yeah, he's blowing up people that he drives by, but let's just blow the people up. And it was a really good story. It's the only game where I saw the twist coming very quickly, but it didn't matter because it was so well done, like the Red Hood Arkham Knight stuff. But again, I think because a lot of people probably assumed what was going to happen. Did you know the twist? Did you catch on?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of guessed it pretty early on, just because I felt like who else could it be?
Yeah, that was the situation I was in. There were so many tidbits as well when he was talking to Batman and stuff.
Yeah.
But again, it was played out very well, like when you're seeing the flashbacks of the Joker torturing.
That's one of the most surprising things. Sorry to cut you off, but
that's fine.
That was the same as the crime alley kind of scene in Arkham Asylum that just added that weight. I think the moments with Joker, some of them are so subtle. Like I just remember there was one bit where he's like sat on the edge of a bridge just swinging his legs while you're kind of
just whistling. Yeah,
that stuff's amazing. That adds so much to the character and the world and the kind of emotional feeling you have for the story. And then when you get to the sort of crowbar bit, which I've always loved, like I've always loved that storyline. I think it's, again, a bold story decision. When they show that in the game, it's absolutely brutal, and you kind of just think, that's a heavy kind of moment to go through. And the way that they do it is exactly the same as Crime Alley, where you sort of just walk across it. So it's such a good bit. I've jumped way ahead because I didn't talk about the opening of Arkham Knight, which I've done for the other two games. No, it's me. It's typical me. But it was such a good opening. It was so good. I loved it so much with the Scarecrow being back in it. He looks a bit different to what he did in Asylum, but obviously that's fine. But, you know, the town's being evacuated. Do you think how they're going to empty all of Gotham? So it was a clever story telling the first story that wasn't written by Paul Dini either. It was just Sefton Hill, and I think it was probably the same person who helped him with Arkham City. Billy, we'll just call them Billy. And it was great. I love the opening bit. I love the fact you're controlling a character, a random character, and they're in a cafe, and then all this fear toxin gets released and everyone's going nuts and beating up everyone. I loved the scope of Gotham. Again, the villains, it's nice that some of the older villains from City were back, but they all look aged, and, you know, Batman's battered them for like years and years and years, and they're at the end of their tether. And I guess there was a twist in it with Joker as well, which I probably, if I really thought about it, if I'd let myself think about what everything could be, I probably would have got there. But him being a hallucination of the toxin, I thought, because you cremated him at the beginning, didn't you? Which is also great. Yeah,
great
that's huge.
Great song as well. It was, what was the song now? Gone away from me. Something.
Just real quick as well, the other two writers, so Sefton Hill, Martin Lancaster, and Ian Ball.
Oh.
There we go.
I didn't remember either of those names. So
there you go.
Oh, you just couldn't let me call them Billy, could you, Nick?
No, I was like, I feel really bad. We've got to go.
Had to be thorough.
Got to give them the credit. But yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah, that opening bit is really good. Don't you?
So good.
From the perspective of Joker as well. Am I right in thinking that? Are you in the box?
I think. Well, you're. It's an overview of Joker. I'm pretty sure at the time, I think it's just music overplaying it. Right. Well, I know Jim Gordon is talking, and by now, Jim Gordon's voice has turned into what's his name from Breaking Bad?
Is it Bryan Cranston?
No, not Bryan Cranston. The guy, like Gus, is like guy who does all the wiping up for him and everything, clearing up for him. Can't remember. We'll just call him Billy.
Yeah, I know who.
His name is he's now Jim Gordon, but it's, you know, again, opens up Batman's like on top of GCPD, I think, and he's overlooking Gotham, and you think, oh my god, like I'm just gonna dive and hope for the best, and then you're in the Batmobile. It's a really well written story, even with, you know, working out what's going on. But again, there's a lot of character development. The only criticism I see is about the Batmobile, which I enjoyed. The only thing it did take away is, like I said, a lot of the stealthy stuff you did with Batman, because you were out in that open world so much that you missed out on a lot of the stuff that makes. Because even going around Arkham City, you can, you get in these little battles every now and again. It feels like it doesn't happen as often in Arkham Knight, but I really enjoyed it. I played it a lot. It still holds up now, obviously. Just a few holds up, like it's like 40 years old, but. Yeah. It's still as great as it was the first time I played it. Like, if you give yourself a substantial break in it, it's still as good. I really, really liked it. I loved, again, the side villains like Firefly and everything like that were fantastic. You? Yeah. Were you in straight away?
Yeah, exactly the same. I was definitely in for it, especially because it was next gen, current gen, whatever you want to call it. It was just really smart. Looked amazing. I agree with the Batmobile criticism, just because I just got a little bit bored with it. It was that repetitive gameplay that it was the same kind of thing. There wasn't really a lot of kind of dynamic gameplay to it.
I like driving around in the Batmobile. That's what I enjoyed. I liked. I like calling it out of nowhere and letting it skid to take out a bad guy on its way to you. I like jumping in it.
Yeah.
And I like driving around. The tank bits were a bit tedious sometimes. But,
But and then the thing that really kind of took me aback by it is I'm not a massive one for playing side quests on games. I'm very much just give me a narrative, like a really good narrative, and I'm happy to stick with that. Side quests for me is sort of as I get nearer the end of the game. If I'm really enjoying the game, like gameplay and how the story's unfolded, then I'll do side quests to sort of learn more and engross myself in the world before I finish it. So I sort of finish on this big ending where I'm like, I've taken everything in now.
Yeah.
But I generally don't do side quests as I go. There are a few exceptions, and Arkham Knight was one of those where I was just sort of, I want to see how they've done all of these villains. So Firefly's thing was really smart. Man-Bat I thought was really cool.
Man-Bat, by the way, just to say before you move on to your next villain, generally, there was a stage, I was playing it very late. It was very dark. I was on my own. My wife had gone away. And she actually gone away. I didn't send her away for the weekend. She was going to go away to her mother's. And I said, if you're going to go away, this is the weekend to do it. So it was one of those weekends where I just played this game.
Good.
But I was quite tired. I'd chosen no sleep over the game. And there's a bit when you're going up to the roof of this building and Man-Bat just appears at the top and screams. I screamed. Not only did I scream, but I dropped my PlayStation control, which made me jump for a second time. And I was like, I've got to go to bed. fucking Man-Bat. Out of nowhere. I just didn't expect it at all.
It's good.
Sorry. The next villain. Who see next?
Firefly, Man-Bat, and the one that genuinely surprised me the most was Professor Pig.
Professor Pig. A great addition.
Just horrific, and like for
Very
me,
horrific.
Like horror for me at its best is I'm a huge slasher fan, so when it's just a normal person with a knife or whatever, that normally creeps me out. That or The Thing, but completely tangent.
I loved Professor Pig because he was in this little dingy alley thing as well. It wasn't like he was there. But there's one villain. Do you have more to say about Professor Pig? Because we can talk about him for ages.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the character design on him was really impressive, and just the way that it was so sinister. Like that for me is probably the most sinister part of the whole series is the Pig storyline. Just it was uncomfortable, and very smart writing on that kind of part.
Because he's been killing, hasn't he? And he's been taking the body parts, hasn't he?
Yeah,
right.
Pretty horrific.
The two villains which I love, one was barely in it, but it's such a nice bit. Was in Arkham City, which was Calendar Man. He's just sitting in a cell, and then he disappears, and you can rejig your PlayStation time, so he does some shit.
Yeah,
not a shit, some shit. But also one that was huge because he's teased in Asylum. You see him very briefly in City, and then he has a full circle, albeit short. It was Hush.
Yeah.
Which was great because there's all these tidbits about this copycat Bruce Wayne, and Batman's doing this stuff and everything, and it's or Bruce Wayne's doing stuff, but it was Hush, and it was such a good, again, for a Batman fan and stuff like that, with all these villains. He easily could have been a bad guy on his own. They could have based the whole game. I actually thought when Origins was announced, I thought Hush might be the villain. Before they announced it as Black Mask, because he could have his own game, couldn't he?
They could definitely
be a villain.
Yeah,
but I loved Arkham Knight. I loved all the villains, and is there any more you want to? I mean, we could talk about it, but
so much to kind of talk about with it. But it is just a really, again, it's that conclusion to what you feel like started in Arkham Asylum. Everything feels natural in terms of a narrative. It feels like, it does feel like the end of the journey, but not necessarily the kind of predictable end. It's sort of going, okay, this makes so much sense for this story. This is how you built it. This is where it feels like you knew that was going the whole time.
I think the ending got a bit of criticism, didn't it? I think
so. I never really got it. Like, I really like it. I think it's a cool ending. I think, revealing Bruce to the world is just kind of,
I mean, that signified the end. That, for me, that was like, they're never going to do another Arkham game.
Yeah,
like,
you can't.
It's done.
Yeah.
Like, if he didn't reveal himself, and then Wayne Manor blew up, and you didn't know any more about it, you'd think, like, there's always room for more. But for me, when he did that, I was like, there's not much you can do once people know, once obviously Joker's finally gone, which was awesome as well. When you're like, when you're in Joker, when you're in Batman's mind, and you're actually Joker, and you're going around with like a gun and everything.
Yeah,
awesome as well. Yeah, I thought the ending was fine.
I really liked it. I think it's also just one of those things that I feel like with video games, you very on occasion get an ending to a series, because it's always, they always want to make more sequels and whatever. And I feel like for Bruce Wayne Batman's journey, fair enough, you can tell other stories set in that universe, which is obviously what they're doing, but you can't really do much more with Bruce Wayne Batman, because that just feels done. It feels like that's where it's had to end. And in some ways, it did do the Dark Knight Rises kind of ending, where it's like sort of faked his death.
Yeah.
But did he, kind of whatever. In Arkham Knight, it's way more apparent that he definitely isn't dead.
You said it, but
because it's like the Nightfall Protocol, isn't it?
Because then at the end, there's that weird. I think that's the only bit I didn't like. Like, I would have rathered if at the end the criminals were in the alley and they just saw a figure that looked like Batman.
Yeah.
Again, you could interpret it that there was just a figure, and it's just the end of the game is this thing coming towards you. But it definitely seemed like he set on fire and he came down like a demon. Like, I would have rather than just be like something that looked like Batman.
Yeah, I always quite like the idea. In my head, I just wrote this ending that I've just always stuck with. But I've always quite liked the idea that was Azrael at the end, that it was just kind of them saying, like... Didn't Azrael get... I'm pretty sure they did finish his arc, but I just always like the idea that it's like, if anybody was going to take over in that world, I was like, Azrael. I just think that's a nice idea. And
nice.
But I just thought it was really nice. Just a good, solid game.
So overall, as a trilogy / or Arkham Origins goes, we both thoroughly enjoyed pretty much all of it. Other than I had a bit of an issue with Arkham Origins, but you really liked it as well. Is there any more you want to say on the series on a whole before we go into the future of the series? Or
no, I think I'm ready to talk future.
So 2015 Arkham Knight comes out.
Yeah.
Day after Arkham Knight comes out, I finished it probably. And then I'm thinking, what's going to happen next? And then you hear little tidbits from Rocksteady Studios that they're doing a Superman game. And then there's a little bit that they are going to do a Suicide Squad game, because Amanda Waller says at the end of Origins about Suicide Squad and all this stuff. Then Rocksteady Studios go super quiet. Warner Brothers Montreal said they're making a Batman game. The natural assumption is that it's an extension of the Arkham universe, like it's going to be something else. Could be something to do with Nightwing, could be something to do with... no one's quite sure. The Court of Owls stuff starts happening, and I'm immediately thinking it's... I immediately thought that they're going to extend the Batman story, and somehow Batman's going to be involved in the Court of Owls, like as Bruce Wayne, or there's going to be some link there. And then we get to DC Fandom, and they're they tell us that they're going to do an announcement for Warner Brothers Montreal and an announcement for Rocksteady Studios. Did you think the Rocksteady Studios would be a Batman game? Did you think that was a no-go because Warner Brothers Montreal were doing it? Did you think either of them would actually be a proper Batman game, like Bruce Wayne as Batman?
No, I didn't think either would be Batman. I felt like Warner Brothers Montreal especially wouldn't be Batman because they did Origins, and I feel like there isn't a lot else they could do with Batman, kind of early Batman, and I don't think they'd ever touch on post.
I think a prequel would have been the wrong move. I think because
yeah.
I think it's good that they did something else.
And then Rocksteady, I didn't think they'd do it just because, again, it was the fact that Arkham Knight just feels definitive that that's Bruce's story. My only kind of thought was like if they did a Batman game that it would be somebody else under the cowl. Which I just thought would be bold, but also who do you do and how do you do it kind of thing.
How do you go with it?
Yeah.
Then you and I text each other just a few days before DC Fandom because they released a poster, Rocksteady did, and it was announced it was going to be Suicide Squad, and it looks like Superman's involved. He's got these weird things going on with the eyes, and then just after that they announced that Suicide Squad kills the Justice League, which is a pretty great title.
Great title.
And again, already I'm thinking like it must just be, you're probably going to be one character in the Suicide Squad maybe. I don't know who it would be because City already had Deadshot in it, and I wasn't sure how they were going to do it. And then, bam, DC Fandom. Warner Brothers Montreal announced Gotham Knights, which is strange because the trailer itself. So I was watching it, sitting next to my wife, and she cares in her own way about what I care about with these things. But I was like, oh my God, it's continuation of the Arkhamverse. So in my head already, I was like, right, Rocksteady, the Suicide Squad game is probably nothing to do with the Arkham. But this is because Bruce Wayne is dead. He dies. The trailer's like, bam, Bruce Wayne, I died. This is happening. And then during the trailer, very quickly you see that it is a completely different world because everyone looks different. Red Hood is like bobbing around like nothing's ever happened in his life. Yeah. Batgirl is, walking, where she was paralyzed she had a DLC before she was shot by Joker.
Yeah.
And then she's going around, and it's a completely different. They kind of touched upon it afterwards. It's not set in the Arkham universe. It's its own game. Batman is gone, but you are Batgirl, Red Hood, Nightwing, or Robin, and you're trying to be the next Batman. Basically, what were your thoughts on it? The trailer, the gameplay. If you saw it, you excited?
So the bit that actually clinched it for me, where I realized that it wasn't actually. I don't know why I didn't think about the Barbara thing, but the bit where I was like, oh, okay, this definitely isn't the same as the Arkham series, was when they said that Jim Gordon was dead. And I was like,
yes, but I did think that. And I was like, did Jim Gordon die in Arkham Knight? And then I thought, he's died in something. He's died in something recently. But
yeah, I think he's still alive in the Arkham Knight world, because I'm pretty sure he's there at the end. Like, he does the little speech and he stood next to the signal in Arkham Knight.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
and then
of course.
And then he gets a text off Tim Drake that's like, "Did you remember to bring it?" And you get the impression that it's like Tim Drake's proposing.
I know where he died, but anyway, just in case, I won't say anything.
But yeah, so I was like, okay, so it's definitely a different world. All for a plot line where Batman's dead, and you have a Gotham that's in chaos post that. Interesting to add to the mix that Gordon's dead as well, because then it really is who's looking after Gotham. You give it these guys. That's cool. Cool to see Freeze is in it. Gameplay looked fun. I'm really disappointed there's no local co-op. Like, I'm a huge local co-op fan. And I can understand why, because it is difficult to do local co-op games, but bring it back.
Bring it back. But we could play it, Nick.
This is true. We can.
Two different countries.
Yeah, join together. And then when the Court of Owls bit came on at the end of the trailer, that's what got me excited, just because, huge Scott Snyder fan. And
exactly, me as well. I was a little bit underwhelmed with the the initial trailer with all they've all got their own colors, and I was just like, yeah, okay, like this isn't really doing for me. It's not in the Arkhamverse. I'm a bit confused about everything. I started watching the gameplay, and I thought it looks very similar, but I thought also obviously it's still quite early on, but it looked a bit clunky, but fine. But the Court of Owls bit, and the fact that Scott Snyder, big deal to Nick and I, he actually was roped in by Warner Brothers Montreal to actually to go over the script and everything.
Yeah, huge.
Sold. I'm in. Like, I'm not going to get as hyped yet about the Arkham games, but I'll tell you now, talk to me in another few months and I'll be invested. I'll be ordering that special edition. But now I've turned, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I wasn't quite on board, but the more I've watched about it, the more I've read about it, they've been very upfront with their interviews post DC fandom, when they've been like, yes, this is what we're doing. This is how it works. Yes, there were little Easter eggs in there to we hope people wouldn't work out straight away, but they have. Like, great. And the fact that Court of Owls weren't really touched upon it in the gameplay trailer as well. It's just that, again, if we talk about trailers, that bit itself looked really good. Like, if they had teased that to me before I'd actually seen what Gotham Knights really was, I think I would have been really excited.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, I definitely don't, when that Court of Owls bit got attached onto the end as the kind of stinger, I definitely thought Batman isn't going to be dead. Yeah. I think he's just going to have faked his death to take on the Court of Owls. Knowing that storyline, you kind of like, it just makes sense. Whether or not you play as Batman, don't know. But I definitely think that's the storyline that they've gone with, just because the Court of Owls are so, secretive and so built into Gotham that really the only way Bruce can take them on is, I'll fake my death so they don't think I'm coming for him.
Maybe Warner Bros. Montreal have seen Naughty Dog and they're like, right, we're going to do the opposite, because people are angry that they're not going to play as Batman, right? So people will play Gotham Knights and then bam, you'll play as Batman at the end and everyone will be really happy in the world.
Yeah.
So that is, I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I think it looks really cool. I think that the only thing that sort of didn't grab me was just, I know the gameplay was pre-alpha, but the gameplay, there wasn't a section of it where I was like, oh, okay, this looks really cool. But it just looked like Arkham. It just looked like the same thing, which, as I said, the combat in Arkham is amazing. So I wouldn't expect lots to change there. But given that you're playing as 4 characters with different abilities, the way that they move seems very similar.
I think it looked a bit like, there are these, just looked like there were too many special effects. Like, I'm pretty sure at one point Robin teleported and they said it was this new technology from, I don't know, from Star Labs or something. I was like, what the fuck's he teleporting for?
Yeah.
But tell you what, the voice casting, I do care about the voice casting, but it didn't work for me at all. The person who did Batgirl, the person who did Robin's voice, it doesn't sound like, just doesn't sound as dark as I would like it to be.
Yeah.
But looks good. I'm excited about it. I will definitely be keeping an eye on what happens with it. And I'm 2021 that's out. So we've been waiting around now for a few years for the next Batman game.
Yep.
Which brings me to my biggest annoyance about the whole thing. This whole thing, which brings me on to Suicide Squad, Kills the Justice League. I cannot believe that it's not out till 2022. Like, that for me, it's just like come on, like, you've had and it's only for PlayStation 5 as well. So, which I understand they're really working hard, and obviously they're trying to make this absolutely monster of a game. But Jesus Christ, I'm not gonna make it to 2022.
I kind of thought about it, but I was when I saw that, I was like, oh, that is quite far away. But then I also kind of thought, you don't want 2 Batman games launching the same year.
No, and I guess I guess it's like you swap. They're trying to be sensible and stuff in that terms of release. But it just feel, we're definitely in a place now where games get delayed. We've said about Avengers, but it still doesn't look that polished. Yeah, it's out this week, but they already had delayed it. So what would it have been like if they released it when it was supposed to? Yeah. Cyberpunk's been delayed. Last of Us 2 was delayed, albeit just because of the coronavirus thing. But oh no, it wasn't actually. It was delayed twice, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a couple of delays on it. But
so a couple of delays.
The last one was coronavirus.
They could just think, I'm trying to give them a little bit of credit here and think that they could just thought, right, if we release this summer 2021, we're probably going to end up saying it's delayed until 2022. So let's just get it right first time. I will, however, be very pissed off if we get to 2022 and they're like, right, we will now delay this. I'll be like, no, you've had long enough, Rocksteady Studios. I have some inside people that I can talk to. Not anymore. I did. But overall though, I thought it came off. I think the trailer came off very well. It was a shame there was no gameplay, but again, if they're not ready to show it, they're not ready to show it. But I love the idea. I love the idea that Brainiac has taken over Superman and stuff like that. I love the characters they chose: Killer Shark, Captain Boomerang, Harley Quinn, Deadshot. There's already a lot of stuff going on saying that Deadshot has been like recast in the game because I think he's completely different in Arkham City. But you know, she's got to get on with it, I guess. I mean, it could be a completely different Deadshot. Like that Deadshot could have been killed. I think they'll tie up that loose end because it is set in the Arkham universe, they've said. So I think they'll tie that up. It sounds like it's the same voice actress for Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
I know that Killer Shark is voiced by Samoa Joe of wrestling fame.
Cool.
Which I found out, which was pretty cool. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I'm annoyed that I have to wait, but I'm really excited about this. And I think they've gone the right way because I think Superman would have been a really hard game to make. Even after something like Spider-Man, where everyone was worried about how he would swing through New York and stuff. And yes, you could fly as Superman and everything, but I think this is a better way to maybe get there eventually. But it's pretty fun, isn't it? Like Suicide Squad sounds pretty fun on paper. Again, it's co-op as well. Like you and I could play it together if we wanted to.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle about it. I don't know. I like the idea of a Suicide Squad game, and I love the characters they've chosen. I think they're really cool. I hope the gameplay isn't as colourful as the trailer pitched it to be, because it was a little bit too, I don't know.
Well, it looks a bit like Sunset Overdrive, everyone says.
A bit Sunset Overdrive, a bit Fortnite, kind of.
I think it'll be darker. I do think it'll be darker, but I think for Rocksteady Studios, they've made 3 pitch black games now.
Yeah.
So I think they were like, here's an opportunity to have some daylight in the world. But
I
would be very surprised if it was daylight most of the time.
I mean, like obviously, I assume the setting of it is Metropolis because that's where they're at in the trailer.
I think so. I've not heard any different, but being Metropolis definitely a big part.
Which is obviously just a lighter place than Gotham anyway. But it was the combat that it looked a little bit too lighthearted. I wanted to do something that was a bit more like rough and tough kind of hits, whereas it looked a little like party-esque. And that was the Flash comics and stuff, they're quite dark, generally nighttime comics. But obviously, if it's the Justice League, you've got to think that you're going to be challenged with facing Flash, and he'll be a villain in it where his speed is the issue. So you probably have to go to what's it called? Where's he live? Central City. It depends what characters they pick, really. But you've got Green Arrow. Yeah, probably will be in there. Wonder Woman, Superman. So I think the trailer. My thought is that it will be darker tone and look to it, but I immediately was a little bit put off by how bright it was and colourful it was, because it looked, with the aliens as well, with like purple blood and stuff like that. I thought it was funny though. I laughed actually. I laughed at the end when Captain Boomerang throws his boomerang and he blames King Shark. Yeah, it's definitely quirky. I'd like to. I want to see some gameplay just to see how it really functions, and B, I hope it is darker than what they've kind of pitched it as. And then I think the only other thing I'm really curious about is, because it is set in the Arkham universe, are they saying it's post, or are they saying?
I think it is. Harley Quinn for me is I generally think she's got nothing else going on in her life, so she's just getting on with it, with doing this Suicide Squad stuff. I think anyway, but
because then my thought is just, how do you, like, they have to address Batman, like key member of Justice League. So how do you then address the lack of Batman, or has something happened that somebody else has replaced him or whatever? Not saying that he has to be in it, but I feel like if you're doing Kills the Justice League, you need to address it somehow and say, these are the members and this is why, because whatever.
I would really think there's going to be. I think there'll be heavy Batman ties in there. I think he'll be like he'll be a statue. Like I imagine, like you see the Hall of Justice and he's a statue outside it, and they remember him. I think there'll be a bit of me as well that thinks you'll end up back in Gotham for something. I don't know what, like something Batman's done, like a protocol he's put in place or something, and that's what interests me more than anything, because they've said like it's like heavily related to the Arkham universe. So, the only tie in that whole thing is Harley Quinn and a different Deadshot. There's no Killer Shark or anything. I think there is mentions of Metropolis around Arkham and stuff.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah. Something
about Superman maybe at one point, or definitely Lex Luthor is there. But I think it'll be one of those games as well where there's a twist in it, and it somehow you end up back in the Arkham universe. I mean, for me, I think after this they would probably have to think about trying something else other than superhero games, although that's what they're very good at.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know where this goes for them. Like, I don't know if they're looking at Suicide Squad trilogy or not.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
I think the other thing I'm curious about is just whether they take a bold choice with it and kill off one of the Suicide Squad. Like, I feel like as a storytelling point of view, if you have those 4 playable characters, if you kill off one of them because it is the Suicide Squad, unless there's loads at the start, in which case it's like, there's like 8 or 9 members of Suicide Squad and then some of them die. I feel like you have to have that scenario in a squad game somewhere.
Yeah, well, one of those. I mean, Harley Quinn and Deadshot, I think, are going to be the 2 leads in it by what I think as well. I think Killer Shark is probably a bit expendable, and Captain Boomerang as well, maybe. But there'll definitely be people going to die.
Yeah.
Just don't know who.
Yeah, which I think the exciting thing about it is that I think from a storytelling point of view, knowing that they've made bold choices with the Arkham game, they could then make bold choices with the squad game, like even bolder, just because it's, naturally those kind of characters are expendable. Or some of them are. And I think that's the interesting side of it. That's the side that I'm going, oh, okay, you could actually write something or craft something that is darker in nature. And I don't necessarily, like, if that's what they did, if they presented a game that is really colourful and bright, but then, you get halfway through it or to the final act and then it starts to get really dark storytelling-wise, that I'm absolutely fine with, because it's you're selling on one thing, but you're presenting another, which I think, from a storytelling point of view it's always quite smart that you kind of go, you think you're going to get this, but actually what I'm giving you is this. I think that's kind of what I'd hope it is if they continue down the kind of light path. I just really hope it's not a sort of party co-op, let's go beat up some people and kill the Justice League hoo-ha kind of thing, because I just feel like
I'd be disappointed if it was that as well. I definitely got that vibe, like when they're all going around doing their killings and stuff like that. But and I've read that you can do co-op and stuff, but it's more of a solo game. But I would hope that it's like, right, this is Harley Quinn's part of the story. She's going to go and do this, and they could be a bit like Last of Us 2 in a way, not as there's 2 of you doing different things basically. I'm excited. I think they'll set it out early, because I think they're going to lose people if it is bright and colourful, and it looks like something they're not used to from the Arkham and Rocksteady studios. I think they'll probably lose people in a way.
Yeah, I'm torn on it, because I do feel like if they pitched it as like a fun kind of 4-player co-op romp, I feel like there would be a lot of gamers that would buy into it, especially kind of that Fortnite community. I feel like you'd pick up so many of those kind of, I play online with all my mates and I'm looking to just play as superheroes and just kick ass. But I think, I hope anyway, they've got more allegiance to what the Arkham series is, that it's this storytelling, these characters that they built up for however many years. There's a real care for the craft, and not just kind of, we want to create a game that's going to pull a load of new gamers into it and create this kind of fun party shenanigans.
I agree. I hope it doesn't go the Fortnite way.
Yeah.
Pray to God, Nick.
Yeah, we can only hope.
Cool. Well, I think that covers everything.
Yeah, I think that's good.
In the Arkhamverse. We could talk, like I said, but
yeah.
Good. Well, I'm very excited about the future of Rocksteady Studios, and we'll give props to Warner Brothers Montreal for their Court of Owls side of things. I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, it's nice that there's one in 2021 and one in 2022. So good that they're spread out a little bit. Gives me time to save for a PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
All right. So the next podcast, we are going to talk about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes.
So a fantastic film. So if you're a Spider-Man fan and you enjoy that film, then you can join us next time for our next podcast.
Yep.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nick.
Thanks to you, dude.
All right. Take it easy.
Catch you later. Bye.
Bye, everyone.